course, we're here to learn a few secrets of entrepreneurship, how to make it all go forward. What I want to do is share with you some of the lessons I've learned along the way, some are related to when you're working, some of them not. But they've all come together and impacted me, and if I can share those with you, hopefully it will ease your steps in your entrepreneurial journey. One quote that kind of impacted me was, "If I have seen further, it is by standing upon the shoulder of giants." And that's Sir Isaac Hamda. Now, there is no shortage of giants. Now, I wish I could remember all of their names. Does anyone recognize any of these faces? Going right back to the initial entrepreneurial spirit, we've got St. Godric, who was a trader, and he discovered that if I buy cheap and sell high, I can make money. I've got Comicio D'Amici, who was a financier through Italy. He found out that if I can rent money as a tool, I can make money. And so you see, there are certain things that we take for granted that were incredible entrepreneurial leaps that someone took. So the things that we take for granted, someone at some point went out and made a lot of money. J.P. Morgan, financier. J.D. Rockefeller. Henry Ford, the industrialist, and who hasn't been in a Ford car. Advertising. Can you imagine the concept of, hey, I'll help somebody get their word out? You know, so back then it was about print advertising. What's the best way to do that? Does anybody know what the widest, most incredible advertising mechanism there is today?
Flyers.
Say that again, please.
Flyers.
Flyers?
Internet.
Internet. It's the internet. Internet's available 24/7. Flyers are still used very much in local areas, but they're not 24/7. You have to actually go get it and distribute it and everything else. And of course, we've got the new generation. We got Mr. Gates, we get Mr. Jobs, Mr. Lazaridis. And of course, what's missing? If you look at that, there is something that's glaringly missing. And when the first 10, 15 people came in here this morning, I went, that will explain this slide. What's missing?
Me.
Okay, good. Good answer. That's the entrepreneurial spirit. Well done. Who else is missing? You got it. We're missing some women. So we got Heather Priestman. And you know, for the life of me, when I did this, I can't remember who she is. Does anybody recognize her? I think she did something along the lines of investing money and just turning like a few hundred million into several billion. But she did an incredible job with that. So you see, there is no shortage of giants. And by having all these people to, spur us on the go, you got to ask yourself, how are you going to fit into this whole entrepreneurial spirit? So the key points that I bring up, I want you to constantly be thinking, where am I going to be going with this? And it's the spirit that will get you further forward. This is the thing, the one key piece that got me thinking entrepreneurial and moving. In 1969, this footprint was made on the moon, July 20th, I believe. And can you think about it back then? This was the 60s, There was, the hippies were running around. This was, the age of experimenting with recreational chemicals and all that kind of good stuff. And then someone had the audacity to say, before the end of the decade, we are going to land a man on the moon. Do you have that spirit within you to make an audacious statement like that, to say, this is what I'm going to do with my life, this is what I'm going to do with my idea? Where did that lead? So, shortly after the 60s and into the 70s, before this technology happened, I ended up at university and I bought my first computing device, just to show you how fast things move. Does anybody know what this is? It's a slide rule. Okay, how many bytes of memory does it have? 2, right? I've got 1, 2, right? Not bad. And since I bought this in 1979 for $3.71 for $3.29, I've never changed the batteries. In fact, today a battery will cost you more than my computing device did back then. And what's amazing is if you think back to the 50s, are you familiar with the SR-71 Blackbird that still flies today? The Mach 3 jet for high altitude reconnaissance over nasty places. It was designed using bees, if you can imagine it. So here's this incredible piece of technology that's out there. And what are the resources that you have available to you? In fact, if you think about how fast things move, anybody ever seen one of these? You ready? You ready? Okay, that has more computing power in this card that someone will buy and give to somebody and toss into the garbage. More computing power in this card than existed in the world in 1950. Isn't that amazing? Things are moving fast. So this is what they did with all of their technology, taking that entrepreneurial spirit to say, yes, we can do this. Here you have it. So here you've got this incredible space shuttle. Does anybody ever follow the space shuttle things, or is it kind of gone past that? Everybody's more into like the video games and things now, right? PlayStation, Wii, a lot.
X-Prize.
Yeah, okay. But what impresses me when I was at the Institute for Aerospace Studies, the day the first one of these went off, we were huddled around that little TV and we were watching this thing go off. And, you know, all computer simulated everything, so there were no accidents when this thing kind of went up. And if you look at it, it's just a ballet of forces, of physics, of everything. And from my perspective, and everything I know about engineering, the engineering process, you know how they say get it right the first time? I'd be damned if I've seen an engineering drawing that was V1.0. You know, it's usually V372. So I was really amazed that this thing just didn't fall off this thing, you know, like the off it went poof, and it fell over. But it's amazing if you watched it, if you've ever watched one of these, it comes off. It's got these two giant solid rocket motors strapped to each side of the liquid fuel, and it comes off. And it's not like, and then it's gone and off it goes. It comes up in this ballet and it starts to come up, and then it rotates ever so slowly, and it kind of goes up. And the shuttle is actually facing down as it goes up. So if you're the pilot, you're sitting upside down as this thing is going up, as is the rest of the crew. Does anybody know why it does that? Does anybody know why they would make this thing so complex that we have to ever so gently roll this thing with billions? Now this, of course, took off from Florida. You know, there's unbearable humidity, there's alligators, there's all sorts of going. And of course, they have the American budget to go with it. And batteries in their clicker. Okay. When we started Atlantis, this was what we call the sports car version of, you know, the American space shuttle. This was our rocket that we worked on. Now, in the spirit of the entrepreneurial spirit, we had just started our company. I was in grad school with a fellow who went off to the Defense Research Establishment in Suffield. He actually designed the airframe. He came back to us and he said, hey, what are you guys up to? He says, oh, we'll stick a microprocessor in anything that's, you know, moved or nailed down or, you know, whatever. We'll put a microprocessor in. He says, can you guys make me an autopilot? We said, sure. And he laughed and I said to the guys, right? An entrepreneurial spirit, what are you going to do? So we bid on this program to do all the avionics, all the electronics, all the software to make this little rocket fly. And in terms of size, like I say, the sports car version, if you stand out in front of it and reach up, you can kind of touch the top of it. Okay, that's how big it is. Do note that where the space shuttle had only 2 large solid rocket boosters, we have 19. Okay, so we had something in Canada we could say was far beyond them. And they have alligators. Is anybody aware that out in southern Alberta we have rattlesnakes? So you see, our animals were far deadlier than the alligators, and we've got 19 rocket motors. That's the entrepreneurial spirit to keep it going. So we bid on this. We bid against Spar Aerospace. We bid against Canadian Aviation Electronic. And you know, they came back and said to the Canadian military, the Defense Research Establishment, it can't be done. We bid on it and we won it. You know why? Because we were too stupid to know that we couldn't do it. And at the end of the day, we did it. So sometimes all information that you have says something can't be done, but if you've got that entrepreneurial spirit within you, you will believe in something and you will make it happen. I mean, the technology might be lagging a little or whatever, but you're going to make that happen. And just to show you that we have a dramatic shot as well, there it is. Of course, I think it's much better than the space shuttle. I couldn't get a bird to fly into the scene at the time, but that's kind of the way it goes. So here you guys are. Are you anybody here in grad school, or are you basically all undergrads? One in grad school for the most part? So you're doing your studies, you're preparing, you're getting all the groundwork laid for where you're going to go and what you're going to do. And you're here in philosophy because you have that entrepreneurial spirit. So my question to myself is, what could I possibly share with these people that would be of particular value to them? And I thought, hey, I've got a few key points, a few learnings that I've had. And the way I work, remember I told you the secret earlier about the little microphones and everything? Here's the second secret when you're speaking, it's organizing a presentation. So I took all of the first letter of all of my key points, and I threw them up in the air, and they came down on the ground, and this is what I got. And I said, I'm going to talk to you guys about Nufgut. Okay? So that's where we're going to go. But after a little bit of thought and everything, I rearranged the letters, and I came up with something which I thought was a little fascinating. I hope you guys like it. So you see a little, creative kind of stuff. I ended up with Kung Fu. So, and we're going to take this just a little further, and I hope you guys will bear with me. Kung Fu entrepreneur, and that's where we're going to go. So all of my key points are associated with the first letters in the word Kung Fu. Okay? Has anybody seen the movie, by the way? Oh, good. So I'm not going to ruin it for anybody, right? Okay. Oogway, Master Oogway. Shiki says, but who's worthy to be trusted with the secret of limitless power? Kind of like being, if I give you all these secrets to become an entrepreneur, can you guys be trusted? Huh? Or is global domination in your mind there somewhere? Is that what's going to happen? So that's where we're going. And of course, Oogway says, I don't know. Well, I don't know who of you can be trusted in here, but I have this belief in human nature, so let's just keep going. Number one. My rascally rabbit story. I live on a farm, and I was coming home one day, and I see this rabbit, and this rabbit is eating grass beside this fence, right? And the fence is basically a, large compound for two very large, very dark, very unforgiving German shepherds. And I'm watching the rabbit, and he's munching, and every so often the rabbit does this. Not bad. It's not as good as the Wii graphics, but hey, it's going to do for this morning. Right? And then it does this, and it would crunch away some more. A couple of interesting things to note is that the grass up against the fence is very green, very lush. This rabbit could have been eating grass in the middle of the field, but in the middle of the field, the grass has been overeaten. It's short, it's dry, it's horrible grass. But this little bunny has taken the risk to eat the really nice grass up against the fence. Right? Key to it is it's constantly coming up and listening for the danger signals, doing what it can. In the entrepreneurial spirit, when you get an idea, it's got to be out of the mainstream. It's got to be away from the dry grass. It's got to be something that you believe in, that you're willing to go the extra mile. It's got to be that spirit to innovate, where you're going to take that risk. You can go out there, because entrepreneurs do that. You can't be a me-too product. If you do that, it means you've got like a $1 billion marketing budget, and you can crush anybody with a me-too product. But an entrepreneur has to have that spirit to go after that lush green grass, to go where no one else has gone. If you watch Star Wars, you know that. Okay? Who here wants to be in sales? Oh, this doesn't look good. Yeah, okay, well done. Okay, who here has parents? You're in sales. Have you ever tried to sell anything to your parents, like why you need to get the car, or why you need this, or why you need that, or a new laptop, or who knows, right? And we have significant others, like girlfriend, boyfriend. You're in sales, Have you ever tried to sell anything to them? Trying to present a point, or do anything like that? Herb Tarlett, is anybody familiar with the old show WKRP in Cincinnati? He was the quintessential, horrible, oh my God, there's no way I'm going in sales if my life depends on it kind of guy. And in our world, sales seems like it's not that great a thing. And I'm going to tell you that the difference between being an inventor and being an entrepreneur is sales. I went through 20 years of being the director of R&D for Atlantis Aerospace, doing rocket science, having fun, because I was really fortunate that one of my partners said, I'll do the sales. I thought he looked like this every day he came in, I said, you are horrible, get away from me, right? And then I left, when we sold the company in 98, I came out, and I went to a meeting of coaches and mentors, and we went downtown, And in this meeting, everybody kind of gets to introduce themselves, say what they do. And this one person got up one day, and he stood up and said, I'm with the noblest of professions. Now, when someone says that, what are you going to do? You know what I did? I leaned in and went, oh, I got to hear about this. My ear went forward there. I was waiting for it. He says, I've been in sales for 20 years now. Couldn't believe it. The noblest of professions, sales? Can you imagine? He says, hang on a sec, because he saw all of our reactions were kind of like that. He's relating the noblest of professions, and we're kind of all gagging. He says, let me share something with you. He said, look at your human body. Suppose I give you the most perfect blood you could possibly get. You've been to 300 naturopaths. You've purged your system. You've cleansed it. You've done everything you can. Your body is very full of blood. Right? Would you live or die? It's fabulous blood. He said, if you don't have a heart pumping the blood through your body doing what it's supposed to do, you would very rapidly die, would you not? That's what a heart attack is. Heart attack happens, the blood stops flowing, you're dead. So guess what? In sales, salespeople do for the economy what the heart does for your body. They keep the cash flowing. They keep the ideas flowing. They keep it all flowing. So, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you better start embracing sales. And this is how we're going to embrace it. Cash is a sales funnel. Any martial artists in the room? Oh, good. Would you do me a favor and not point out the fact that we're doing the Kung Fu Entrepreneur, which is Chinese, and I'm about to talk about a katana, which is Japanese. Okay, don't tell anybody that. Okay. The katana, if anybody is familiar with it, it's a legendary sword, and to borrow from Kung Fu Panda, it is a legendary sword made of stuff that legends are made of, okay? But why is it a legendary sword? The requirements that came down to make a katana in order that the samurai could be incredible warriors was it had to be incredibly sharp and keen, and to have an edge sharper than any other sword, and it had to be resilient. In other words, you could pound on it and pound on it, and it would never break. It would flex. It would be incredible. To the mechanical engineers in the room, we know that those are two opposite factors that are associated with materials, right? If I make something very hard, it's brittle, right? Like a piece of glass with an edge. It will brittle and it will snap. And if I make something so that it will flex and bend and everything like a paper clip, you can't put an edge on a paper clip. It's just a paper clip. And if you try, it just folds over and rubs on itself. So how do you get something that is both incredibly sharp and has the characteristics of being very malleable, very flexible? Well, what the Japanese sword makers found out was that if I take a very soft piece of metal, I take a carbon piece of metal, which is very hard and can hold an edge, and if I marry the two, and then if I pound that little ingot out and I fold it over, and pound it out and fold it over, and pound it out and fold it over, I have somewhere between 20,000 and 32,000 layers of these two steels. Note that the two steels are independent of each other. They're married, but they operate independently. So what each contributes to the strength and the flexibility of the steel is the full effort of its particular strength, right? Either sharpness or flexibility. And by doing that, we have the sword of which legends are made. So the katana principle says you have to, you take the spirit to innovate plus the sales, right? And as the katana is made out of two distinct elements, so the entrepreneur has two distinct things. Not only must you have the spirit to innovate all those great ideas, and I've heard it, so I got this great idea, but I can't tell you because you'll feel I'm going to do something. Well, if you've got a great idea and you can't get it sold, it doesn't matter. And I'm not talking about taking somewhere in the middle, right? The sword has the one metal that has those pure characteristics and the other that has the complementary characteristics. So the katana principle says you have to complement these two things. You have to do both, and you have to do both incredibly well. So let me ask you a question now. Who wants to be in sales? This is going to hurt, but if you don't put your hand up, give up. Just don't even bother thinking about an entrepreneur. You know what Bill Gates' moniker was on his business cards when he started the company? Pitchman. Pitchman. That's sales. All Bill Gates did was run around and said, we're going to provide software and you're going to pay for it. And all he did was sell, 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 and sell. The concept that we would be paying for software. And guess what we've been doing for the last 20, 30 years? He went out there as an entrepreneur and he combined DOS with the ability to get out and pitch it and sell it. And that's what he did. So there's the katana principle. K is the first letter in Kung Fu. Tai Lung. You're just a big fat panda. I'm not a big fat panda. I'm the big fat panda. You ever notice that everybody's there to offer some sort of criticism? You know, if you do something great, someone's going to tell you what you didn't do right about it or otherwise. Have you heard of this policy, the open door policy? Come on in. You guys have all been in the co-op, right? And wherever you've worked, they always have an open door policy. Yeah, and have you gone in and, you know, given some ideas or this or that, what happens? Boom, right? A lot of times people will have an open door policy, but that's not enough. I was sitting there once in my office, and I had a guy that I'd been working with for 10 years, you know, doing all this rocket science stuff. JD was my right-hand guy, loved him, respected him. He was untouchable. Came to me one day, I had an open door policy, and I said, hey, what's up, JD? He says, can I talk to you? I said, sure. Well, we were commissioning a new building. We had all these R&D projects going. I was taking off the R&D projects, because when you're an entrepreneur, you have to kind of take care of a little of everything. You're wearing all sorts of hats. So I brought in a project manager to kind of act as a go-between them and me, and just see how things were going. Now, every time something went wrong now, the project manager would come and get me and drag me down to a little R&D group. So every time they saw me, guess what I would say? So what's happening? What's going on? So guess what they associated seeing me with? I showed up and they went, oh, something's going wrong, right? So he comes in and says, hey, Chief. I said, yeah. He says, they call me Chief. I love that. Okay. He said, hey, Chief. I said, what? He says, you kind of have your head up your ass these days. Here's a guy that I fought for 10 years to get him salary increases, to get him the best office space, to get him all the computer equipment he could need. And he comes in and he tells me that. I got an open door policy. I was fuming. I was red. I was mad. I just wanted to grab by the throat. I said, JD, I said, can you excuse me a minute? He said, sure. And he left my office. I closed the door, and I'm thinking, who is this guy? I've done everything I can for 10 years. And I flew back and forth in my office for a while, and I realized, he was right. He really was right. So I went down, I apologized to the R&D troops. I said, you know, guys, I really should see you more often instead of when just something is wrong. But there was a split second there when my open door policy could have been a closed mind policy. So as you're running around, you got to remember, it's not just about having an open door policy. You want to have an open mind. Always have an open mind. You might believe things that are the way they are for a million years. But you just got to crack that door open and say, maybe, no matter how much I believe something, maybe, just someone might have a perspective that I should listen to. So you have to have an open mind. As simple as this little statement is, Michael Pandelo, everything hurts. It probably comes from, you know, painting the Sistine Chapel or climbing up and down all the scaffold, but very profound. Everything hurts. And of course, you know, the big panda loves his little bunnies and everything else. Me too. I like to eat sandwiches. I was out with my daughter once, and we stopped to get one of these incredible Italian sandwiches. And if you ever had one of these, you know that all those vegetables have been, you know, heated up and they're very hot. And of course, you jump into this with relish. You know, when I was a student, I eat 10 times more than I do now, so I know you guys do this. And I was sitting across from my daughter, and my daughter's looking at me, kind of funny, right? And I'm looking at her, and she's kind of like, and then all of a sudden, I got bitten. I don't know what it was. It was some kind of bug. I went like this. And this is where I discovered all about anyway. Does everybody know what this is? It's the universal symbol that, hey, I'm choking, right? Well, I was going to this little bite that I had on the bottom of my chin. Next thing I know, there's this 200-pound samurai warrior behind me, sees this from behind, figures I'm choking. He comes over, picks me out of my chair, grabs me, and I was saved. I didn't need to be saved. But I was saved. It was fabulous. He sits me down, and everything was good. And my daughter says, what is it? And there's this big red mark on my chin here, you see? And I have feeling here, but I don't have feeling here. And the reason I don't have feeling here, in a friendly little, baseball game at work, I broke my jaw once. And it kind of cracked and severed the nerves from here to here, so as a result, there are places on my chin where I have no feeling. Which is interesting. So this little hot green pepper was sliding down my chin, and my arm was watching it, right? And when it got to here, it burned me, and that's when I noticed it. Does anyone know what leprosy is? Kind of, sort of. We all equate leprosy with this horrible, disfiguring disease that leaves us incapable of doing things. Are we all familiar with that? You know what the cause of leprosy is? Leprosy is this little bacteria called leperosa something or other. Any med students in here? Right? And what it does is it attacks the nervous system. And it then prevents pain signals from getting back to your brain. So, you stand up, you don't really know where your foot is. Well, it's not just pain signals, it's any signals that come back up the nervous system. You step on your ankle sideways and you break it. And thereafter you start to drag your foot. You don't feel what's going on anymore, and as a result, you're kind of abrading things and wearing it down. You don't blink because your eyes don't know that they're dry. You lean on a hot plate in the kitchen when it's hot, and it burns all the skin on your hand, and you stand up, and the skin separates from your hand. So leprosy, the horrible disfiguring parts of leprosy is a secondary effect, right? When you prevent the pain signals from getting back to the control center, then, in fact, the entire body will self-destruct. Does that make sense? You get that idea there? So what happens is organizations out there that I call leper organizations are organizations where the lower echelon is trying to get information up to the top to say, guys, we need to change our processes to do this, this, or that. And upper management goes, yeah. If you're not taking those pain signals that are coming up to the top and doing things with them, then in fact, you will die as a leper organization. You will eventually self-destruct. In fact, on the way, you become this horribly disfigured organization where people are constantly grumbling in the cafeteria about how things could be made better, but nobody's ever listening, and so on and so on and so forth. So as an entrepreneur, as well as having that open mind policy, you've got to always be looking for things that are coming in, things that are maybe challenging what it is you believe. Pain is good. All the pain signals coming up are good. It's the disease that's bad. So what you want to do is cure the disease, and you want to look for it. So any pain signal that comes in, so for example, JD coming into my office and saying, hey chief, that's a pain signal, right? I have to be open to it. I have to understand what it really means. It's feedback that says, I can improve the circumstances if I take this and do something with it. So, the you in Kung Fu is unbelieve what you believe. Sometimes you're so sure of everything that's going on, be sure to take that feedback and attribute it some value so that it will mean something to you. You're going to be getting information from everywhere. Here at Key in the martial arts, I used to say to my students, listen to everyone, believe no one. You have to make your own mind up, but listen. You have to know what's coming in. Oogway, one cannot see beneath an agitated water. Let it calm for a while to see through it clearly. Calmness, calm down. Bubbles. Has anyone ever played with soap bubbles? Yeah, you know what? We love them. Bubbles and balloons. I don't know if it's because it starts with a B or because it's round. I don't know. There's something about children who knows it just is absolutely incredible. I was laying on the couch one Sunday afternoon going, oh man, I'm just so tired. I'm tired of doing this entrepreneurial stuff. And it was rainy out, and my daughter's coming, oh, go blow bubbles, come on, let's go. And I'm like, you know what? It's raining out. We're going to blow bubbles for about 6 or 7 minutes. They're going to all bust. They're going to go, oh, this is horrible. And I can go back to sleep again, right? Yeah. So we get out there, we're blowing the bubbles. And what do you think was happening? Any statisticians in here? What do you think the probability is that I can blow a bubble when it's raining and the bubble will just drift out across the field and not be hit by a single raindrop? Or even, be nudged by one, so it'll go, right? Nothing. These bubbles were floating out across the field, and I'm looking at them going, what's going on? What's happening? And my little physics brain is going, whoa! The universe is about to explode! And so I'm going, this is nuts. Here's the key. If you take a bubble and you try to catch it with a dry bubble blower, you know what happens? Or if you try to catch it with your hand. pop, right? If you try to catch one with a wet bubble blower, you know your bubble's got some soap on it, you know what happened? You catch it. Why? Because there's this rapport that's built between the wet surface of whatever you're catching with and the bubble itself. So how is it that a raindrop can pass all the way through a bubble without even touching it? Of course, I've got this theory going on. I run downstairs, I blow a bubble, I've got a little eyedropper now. I'm trying to get, sure enough, the bubble doesn't even tell you that it's been hit. But what happens is the water droplet comes in, because it's water, and most of the bubble is water as well, it's a perfect like joint. And it goes into the bubble, and for a second or two, at least three, it's inside the bubble. And it comes out the bottom end. Can you imagine? And the bubble doesn't even go, nothing. It's perfect, right? And try it, get some, get a little eyedropper. It's just absolutely stunning. So what does this mean? What could this possibly mean to us? In everything you do, you get a great idea as an entrepreneur, but then you have to do things with it. You have to communicate, you have to sell. Everything you're going to be doing involves people, which means communication, right? And when you do that, there is no secret. Everybody's, always thinking about how to communicate. You got to look at their charts, you got to do this, personality types, this, that, and the other. You got to, notice that they've got a picture of them playing golf on their desk and talk about it. There is no real secret other than soft and strong. Whenever you're dealing with someone, if you make a point to listen to that person, if you make a person to draw out and do the same, say things in a way that they will understand, and you take all your relations with respect to people in the spirit of soft and strong, that there is no secret. And that's the lesson from the bubbles. Because just for a second, that little raindrop is inside the bubble getting his, it's having fun. That bubble's protecting it from other raindrops. What the heck, So, soft is strong. There is no secret there. And that's from just observing bubbles and doing that. Which is another point now, is when you see things, always ask yourself why. When something happens, what do I learn from this? What's going to happen? So, the end in Kung Fu, there is no secret. Taiwan, what are you going to do, big guy? Sit on me? Oh, don't take me. So, 8 years ago, I had the privilege to do a workshop on the top floor of #1 tower of the World Trade Center. And it's interesting that it's just this past week that we had the 7th anniversary. And what happened was I was sitting at my desk early in the morning, and I get this phone call from somebody who's out driving a pickup truck. She says, "Oh my God, Eric, they just flown an airplane into the World Trade Center." My first thought was, I didn't have an open mind. I'm thinking, she's nuts. Right? And she says, yeah, it's an airplane. So I'm thinking puddle jumper, like maybe a Cessna got off course and hit, so they're going to go scrape it off or something. She said, no, you go better look. Well, my wife's grandfather lives in the basement. He's the one that's got all the radio equipment, the cable and everything. So I go running down to the basement, and he's got CNN up, and he goes, oh, you got to see this. And of course, what I saw, from the time I got a phone call in my office to the time I got downstairs, was the second airplane flying into the World Trade Center. That's how fast things move. Can you imagine? I get a phone call, I'm sitting at my desk, and then I watch real time in New York. CNN's been reporting this and everything else. Our whole world is connected and it's all happening so fast. And it's tragic. And because I was up there on that top floor, and I've always seen the Statue of Liberty as being this massive, huge thing. From up there, when you look down, and you saw it was this little tiny thing sitting down in the river. It was and because I was up there, I felt every floor come down as if it was jarring my backbone. And the thing I couldn't believe is, how was it possible that someone called me on a cell phone in a truck who heard it on the radio, and I saw this airplane going on a TV thing real time in the basement? Communication is just going so fast. You've got your BlackBerry in your pocket. You've got all of these things going back and forth. Take a picture of your friend, send it over to them. We're so connected. Everything is moving so fast. What does that mean to us as entrepreneurs? Anyone ever seen this? It's a composite picture of the Earth at night. Now, what do you notice about Canada?
It's dark.
Yeah, it's dark. Whoa! But we've got all these natural resources. And you are probably our best natural resources as the entrepreneurs of the future. Look at the States. What does that tell you? Have you ever wondered why in 200 years the States went from being dark like we are to the world superpower? What is the spirit that they have? We went out and tried to get venture capital funding for a product we developed in '96 called Bright Light. And what it was is it allowed you to do on the internet everything you can do in a classroom. They call them webinars now. At the time, the world wasn't ready for them. We had made several sales into places like American Express, McDonnell Douglas, some really big name companies, right? And we were trying to get some funding in order to move forward. We could get no funding in Canada. Our competition, who didn't have a working product, who was based in New York, got funding. That's how much funding they got for something that didn't work. And we had something that was working, we were jumping up and down. They got $16 million, their first tranche. 8 months later, they got another $20 million. They aren't even doing this anymore, but they got $36 million in 1 year because the Americans think differently. They think fast, they think business, they think entrepreneur. You have to be moving. If you're an entrepreneur, an idea sitting in here is worth nothing. Right? It's better to be like out there and something small done and moving. Are you guys familiar with the Honda Civic? When it was first introduced into Canada, it was targeted at the student audience. The first bunch of Honda Civics were absolutely horrible little aircraft. They were kind of more like wheelbarrows, you know, with gas motors. And they rusted out, they're awful. But they learned from it, and they built, and they came up with another one, and another one, and another one. And if you think about it, they started introducing those around the 70s, early 70s. But Ford, Chrysler, all these guys have been around for all those years. So here the Japanese was coming and beating the Americans at their own game. So what we're learning from this is you gotta be first, and you gotta be fast, right? You gotta be out there. Perfect doesn't cut it. You gotta do what they did with the Honda. Bring something in, get some sales. Oh, heard that word again, sales? Sales generates revenue for you that allows you to continue doing R&D, right? So they've got, it's a great idea. They have the spirit of, vehicles. Does anybody know what their entrepreneurial vision is for Honda? And this is why sometimes a good vision is good. Like, is it cars? Is it motorcycles? Is it a gas-powered chainsaw? This is just, I love this, so this is what I'm sharing with you.
They're an engine company?
Yeah! Their mission, their vision is engines for the world. Right? So what's your vision going to be so that you can get out there and be first and faster above everybody else? So let me back up a second there. So the F in Kung Fu is first and faster. And remember, your competition and who we've got is the States. And a lot of people were really happy because our dollar was up there. But our dollar wasn't up there because we were being first and faster. Our dollar was up there because the Americans were doing so well. So it looked relatively wise that we were doing better, but we weren't. And if anybody's ever looked at the history of the Canadian dollar, you'll see that from day one, we've always devalued it so that we would get trade coming in. Anyway, just a slight aside. Maybe I should quickly go back to selling news. Wow. Now, way back when, doing grad work, I spent a whole year taking this information, and we did eye-point of regard studies in a collision avoidance maneuver, and we were comparing human operator responses from a simulator to a car. This is what I was working PhD on. And for a year, I was taking, remember, I didn't have like microprocessors and things. We had like a mini computer in the back seat of the car, and I was trying to record data. And for a year, I was massaging this data. And of course, see this thing that this is written on, this is called a tape or printout. Has anybody ever heard of one of those? Okay, so we went and compiled your program. It would print out this whole printout. Every time you did it, it gave you a whole compile of it. And at the end, it would give you error messages. And what would happen is I'd do a run, I'd go down to the computer, I'd pick up my printer, and as I was walking back to my workstation down the hall, I would look for the errors, and I'd think about what it said, and I'd go, oh, this is how I have to put in a few checks to do this, this, and that. And one day, I was walking along, and I'm flipping through, it said, no errors. And I thought, no errors. What am I going to do now? And for 3 minutes, the hall was about this wide. I was back home. Where am I going to look? What am I going to do? What's my next step? And I was lost. I was completely lost. I was thinking this. Maybe I should just go back to selling noodles. Because I had no idea. And then I realized I was done. I could get on to the next piece. I had completely lost sight of what my goal was. I completely lost sight of what the overarching thing was to do, was to massage the data, get it to the point that I could do stats on it, and then move it forward, right? You got to keep your goal in sight. You got to keep understanding what you're doing, because all too often you can get tied up in the busies, right? You can be, and when I was coaching after I left Atlantis, I'd go into organizations and say, hey, how are you doing? Oh man, really good, yeah. Now you know that, oh, we're busy, really busy. So you making any money? And then go, we're busy. Well, no, you can't be busy if you're not making money, right? And then all of a sudden they went, wow. They didn't even have a goal. They just figured as long as they were busy, things were going good. You know that if you're doing like $1 million worth of sales and losing $100,000, that if you double your sales, you lose $200,000? Profound, eh? So doubling sales isn't good if you're losing money. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you got to keep your eye on the goal. You got to know what it is you're doing. Always keep going back to the goal and what that's all about. So the G in Kung Fu is keep your eyes on the goal. Oogway, there are no accidents. Hi, come on in. You coming in or are you leaving? No, it's okay. Give me a chance to have a drink. Okay. There we go. Living to learn. Now, this is kind of the way I see the entrepreneur's mind, right? The whole world looks like this. It's just this fascinating, endless, arena of things that can be done and developed and grown, and that's absolutely fabulous. It's the most incredible thing in the world. I remember these things. I mean, nowadays, I'm getting a little older. I'm hoping you guys are going to come along and make my life easier. But we are then, after we've got these incredible sort of images in our mind as to how fabulous the world is going to be, and as a toddler, when you're growing and you're falling and you're learning how to walk and you're learning how to speak, people are pretty helpful, right? Oh, look at that. I just see, little Louie, you fell on his butt, and you pick him up and you send him on his way. But beyond that, we say, this is what the world's going to look like from now on, guys. You do your primary school, your secondary school, and all this. So there's this magical linear line that's kind of created in our minds as to how life is going to look, right? And of course, let's not forget that, velocity sticks in there somewhere. So this is the way life is going to go, right? This wonderful straight line. And of course, on top of this, we say, okay, here's your report card. If you come off this line, we're going to tell you how far you come off and what the marks are all about and everything else. So we're constantly being judged as to where we are on the straight line. That's what my life was like. This is where the little red-haired girl told me to go away. Like, oh man, what am I going to do now? See that upper one up there? That's where the bank, pulled our line of credit. So that's right, guys. You've lost too much money now. We got to do that. But this is particularly, life isn't a straight line. It's going to be full of ups and downs. But unfortunately, people can get incredibly stressed out because there's that straight line model that said this is how it's going to go. So we're told we have to live the straight line, but we're not really told how we're going to make it work. Here's a success cycle. How many people remember taking science where you started doing experiments in high school? Yeah. Can you remember what the experimental process was? Yeah, please.
There was the thesis.
Thesis or plan, yeah.
Hypothesis.
Yeah.
Then the materials are going to need it.
Yeah.
And then your process and how you're going to achieve it. Yeah. And then finally your results and then your conclusion on what your hypothesis was and what happened.
Right. So hypothesis, what we're going to do, the materials that we're going to use, all that kind of good stuff fits into the plan. We're simplifying this, by the way, so I want you to be able to do this like that. So all the things that you're going to do are right here, okay? Then we go and do the experiment. Then we take our results of the experiment, right? And we compare the results with what we thought we were going to get, and then we draw some conclusions. And then what do? We say we're either going to do something new in the experiment, right, or we're just going to accept that as is. But that's kind of what we do. You know what people typically do in business? This is going to be fun, right? Do. They do. Remember I said you get caught up in the busies? You get caught up in the busies and you do. You know what you do then? Thank you. Okay, did you interrupt it? Okay, we do the busies, right? Now, after we get caught in busies and we realize that, oh, we're doing stuff and it just ain't working, we do. Come on, we can get there. Okay. What do we do, typically? All the people around without training. We do harder, right? one of my business partners were being interviewed once, and they said, what do you love about being in business for yourself? He said, I love that I'm my own boss, and I can set my own kind of hours, kind of, sort of. And he said, well, what do you hate about being in business for yourself? He says, well, I'm my own boss, and I kind of set my own hours. Yeah. Setting your own hours is you do harder, you do harder, you do harder. And then after that, you get really tired. You know what you do after you do harder and it's not getting the results you want? Because we're stuck up in here. How many people have you heard, like in job, I hate my job, right? You know, that's called recreational complaining, right? Oh, I'm going to bitch about it, but I don't expect anything to happen with it, right? So we do harder than we recreational complain. And no one's ever told us to step back and say, hey, step out of that job for a second and go across the street and look at you in that office doing whatever it is you're doing. You say, did you sign up for that? And people will say, no. You have to step out of the job in order to see what it's doing. But plan, do, check, change is the cycle. So you get in, you're doing a bunch of sales, you're doing a bunch of the creative work, you've got a product that's working great, then you have to come out. You have to step out of the business and say, is it going the way I want it to be going? Right? Is it happening well? And if it is compared to the plan, hey, keep going. If it's not, what are you going to change? What are you going to do differently? Remember, change, the reason it's a different color, it says you can change either the plan, which means the experiment isn't working, or you can change the way you're doing it. Not by doing it harder, but actually changing it, or you might be able to change the way you check, the way you're looking at it. And where that comes from is sometimes, have you ever seen people on diets, and what do they say? Oh man, I'm so hungry, I reduced all this food, this is awful. So the way they're measuring it is by how hungry they are, and they associate hungry with failure. And I say, but excuse me, if you reduce your caloric intake, what's that going to make you do? So you'll probably get hungry. So you're telling me that everything you're doing, according to the way your plan is, caloric reduction, is you're succeeding. Yeah, that's right. So they were measuring it, or they were checking it against hunger being bad. But in actual fact, that's what they were starting out to achieve, right? Another one is there was an airplane that crashed out in Winnipeg. And the reason is they measured the amount of fuel they had using a centimeter stick or an inch stick instead of a centimeter stick, whichever. Which means the measurement that they were using was wrong. They thought they had more fuel than they did, and they were flying over Manitoba, and they ran out of gas because they measured wrong. So, plan to check change. Next time, use the right measure, right? And then we'll see what's going. So what this is, that's the success cycle. And it says, unwork your work. If you're inworking and you're getting all too busy on your organization or that product you're doing, or you get all hung up in sales, from time to time, at least weekly, back out and say, am I achieving what I want to be achieving? If not, what will I change? Unwork your work. Do not get caught in business. Anyone know what happened to the rabbit? No? You're good. I'm going to have to pay you later or something. I was sitting there by the corner of the house, doing some stuff in the garden, and I hear this patting, tap, 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 tap. And I kind of lean back just to see this huge jackal right behind me. So I stand up and I look, and it's tearing across the back, and I see these two German shepherds right behind me. And they are just tearing. And you know how they've got the nail, you can almost hear the grass tearing as they're just pulling themselves so hard. And that bunny is just out in front of them, about 5, 7, 8 feet, and it's just like a rocket. I couldn't believe this, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's going to hit the fence. These two dogs are going to be armed. There's going to be fur flying. It's going to be absolutely awful. And as it got to the fence, it took a pound. We go to slow-mo now, okay, slow. And if you can see it reached, it grabbed, it reached, and it launched. And there's 3 rungs on the fence. And this thing went through the 2 top rungs on the fence like it was flying. And I couldn't believe it. It was so confident in its capability. And that's why it got close to the fence. It knew what it could do with respect to its dogs. And it flew through those 2 slats. And the 2 dogs went, bang, bang, against the fence, right? And it came out on the other side, it hit the ground, and it was just tearing, and it was gone. And I went, that is way cool. So that rabbit had the entrepreneurial spirit. It knew where it could go. It knew all the things and its capability. And it even went into where the competition was and says, guys, let's rumble. And it got away with it. And it was absolutely fabulous. So Kung Fu, the katana principle, make sure you balance in a complementary fashion sales and that spirit as an entrepreneur. You can't just focus on the technology or the new idea. Otherwise, you're going to go bankrupt If you really want to do that, end up in a large company like RIM or something, where you can be an inventor for them. You know, when you do a patent, they'll put your name on it and everything. Fabulous. An entrepreneur balances the two. Appreciate what sales will do for you. Unbelieve what you believe. Open your mind. Be open to all feedback that comes in. Don't become a leper organization. Don't become a leper kind of inventor, entrepreneur, whatever. Take all the information that comes in. Even if someone tells you your design is horrible, take all that information, because if at least even one of your prospects tells you what's on their mind, that is valuable information. No secrets to relating. Everything you're going to do is going to have to do with people in some way, shape, or form. And realize that you can't work with people in a hard way. You have to see them as the most valuable asset you're going to be working with, be it sales, be it discussing technical issues, be it negotiating a contract, whatever. Soft is strong. There are no secrets to relating. Just get out there and do it. Keep the goal in sight. Don't get caught up in the busies. Be first and faster. Don't fall into the, hey, I've got an idea up here. An idea in your head is worth nothing. An idea out there and implement it, even if it isn't perfect, will soon become a moneymaker. It will soon become valuable if you unwork your work by every so often getting out of the process and making sure that it's all done with that experimental process in mind, that success process, plan, reject, change, reject, change. And the real power in the unwork your work is by doing it over and over and over and over again. Everybody know the 4-stroke compression engine in your car? Intercompression car exhaust? All right, so if that happens once, you know, your car kind of goes a centimeter or two. And if it happens thousands of times per minute, you've got horsepower happening, right? So in terms of unwork your work, time to check change, do it frequently, do it often, do it at least weekly on the things that you're doing, do it monthly in terms of bigger plans, and at least on a yearly basis, where if you were Honda, you'd be checking how everything was going against the vision statement, which was engines for the world. This is, see, just to prove that it actually works, right? Right there it's doing about 550 miles an hour, so it's pretty fast coming off the rail. And the question I have for you, from our first quote, after you, entrepreneur, what will the view be like from your shoulders? As Sir Isaac Newton said, the view from his, or the great things that he does because he stood on others' shoulders, what will the view be like from your shoulders? Any questions? Question I often get is, where do we get money and funding? Typically, people won't give you money and funding unless you don't need it. There's a thing called a hockey stick curve. So when you start your business, it starts to grow and grow and grow and grow, until eventually everything's working right. You've done your plan to check change, you've got the ideas, you can sell it, and it goes around the corner of the hockey stick. This is where you want to get to. And most investors won't touch you until you're just about at the corner, and you've got to be able to tell them why you're getting around the corner. And when you go to an investor to get money, everybody always goes, this is a great idea, and all that sort of stuff. Don't tell them why it's a great idea, because they have 3 keys, and their 3 secrets to giving you money is this, and it has to do with sales. Market, market, market. Show them that the people are lined up to buy your product or service, and they'll invest in you. It doesn't matter how brilliant the idea is. Market, market, market. Show them that, which means everybody else believes your idea. That's what they want to know. Anything else? Was your hand up? No? Okay. Yeah?
That rocket you showed, is it still in production, or was that just customized?
Okay, what that was, it's a rocket-boosted target, and it was designed so that it would be very inexpensive and cheap. And the reason being is they were going to fire it, and we shoot real missiles at it. The missiles that were shot at were worth over $1 million, and it was our target price for that was $150,000. Not bad, you know. Oh, I bought another one. What happened was this: is because it's rocket boosted in the ADAT system. When an ADAT system tracks a target, like an airplane flying, it's tracking along, it's doing its mathematical equation. It says it's here, I know it's going to be there. So if the radar, for whatever reason, loses it, it goes, I've made some calculations, it should be here. And it goes, poof, and it goes, I got it again, right? With the rocket boosted target, we would fly along and kick in the rocket, and it would disappear. And the radar would go, where'd it go? right? And they would lose it. So the Americans said it's a very unrealistic target, therefore you shouldn't have it, right? And because it was Canadian and all that kind of good stuff, there was a great lobby against this thing was really useless, okay? Now, two things. Number one, what happens if we put some weaponry in the nose of that thing? One, it was very cheap. It wasn't $1 million item. You know, if we were Boeing, you could be selling that thing for an incredible target, or sorry, an incredible weapon, because the thing went up there. It was impossible to hit, because whenever you wanted to, or if something was getting close, you kick in a rocket motor and it's gone, right? Phenomenal. But they didn't open their minds. They didn't say this thing could be deadly. They just closed them off. So we started, we were working on putting a turbine engine in it so that we could fly at a constant speed. And we had the turbine engine in it, and we canceled the program. You familiar with the Arrow? We call this the mini Arrow program. No, we were there. Everything was working great. And then the Canadians canceled it because of pressure from the States. But there you go. So. And it was awful because it involved Boeing Aerospace in Winnipeg. They made fiberglass airframe. We made all the avionics and electronics that went inside, plus sensor companies and all sorts of things. It was really sad. That was 10 years worth of work, and that was really good. Good question. Anything else? Yeah.
What would you say is one of your challenges right now?
One of my challenges right now? It's always sales. Sales, sales, sales. In this world, everything is moving so fast, right? You can get whatever you want anywhere using the internet. If you can't find the product you want for a particular price, you can just get on the internet and find it, and it'll get shipped to you, and a FedEx truck will show up, and they bring this rocket out the back, right? But it's sales. It's the ability to sell your idea to the public. It's the ability to get out there. So even though, let's suppose, for example, right now we do websites, right? And we do tools that allow people to manage their own content in the background. There are a lot of people doing that. But in the local area, if you get out and sell it, that's who you're going to get. Because people want to deal with you. You ready for this? If they like you and they trust you. That's why soft is strong. That's why there are no secrets. When you're out selling, you're trying to be, you want to be personable and you want to be competent, right? So that's where the trustworthiness and the likability comes. Sales, sales, sales. And so many entrepreneurs just focus on the technology, and they get out there, they've got phenomenal ideas, and they go nowhere because they don't put an emphasis on sales. So if there's anything I can drive into your head today is balance, according to the Canada principle, the sales versus that spirit, that entrepreneurial spirit for innovation.
I think we deserve to give him a big round of applause for the great work